All right, 12 o'clock on your Monday afternoon now. Welcome in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Bill Gunner should be along here with me in a moment. Running a little bit behind today, but oh boy, do we have a lot to react to. As Reaction Monday rolls along with myself and Bill Gunner when he gets here in just a moment, as Carolina falls to 3-3 on the year with a 10-point loss on the road at LSU, 20-10 the other night, and a lot of frustration. A lot of things have changed. You have a now void in your coaching staff with Lonnie Teasley being moved on from being the the offensive line coach. Sean Elliott stepping in. We'll get into that. The defense played well enough for you to win the game the other night and made some plays, got some key takeaways, but just not quite enough for South Carolina to be able to pick up the victory. And it's frustrating, and I get it. We've been listening to your reactions all morning long and certainly want to get more of those as the day goes along as well. So hit us up, 803-404-6100, and we'll share in your frustration as we try and unpack what exactly went wrong on Saturday night and what exactly this means going forward for South Carolina throughout the rest of this upcoming season. But I think I'll start, and Ed Bird, if you don't mind, we'll get into the cuts right away here to get things started, because I think Coach Beamer was able to sum things up perfectly after the game on Saturday night, and this is going to be cut number 14 here, talking about this game just being one of missed opportunities.
When you win the turnover battle, which we did, till that last sack, we were over 200 yards rushing. When you ran the ball, when you win the turnover battle, you win time of possession. When you do all that, you should win the game. And we had our opportunities, and that was the story tonight. Just missed opportunities and not finishing drives.
I think that's a perfect way to sum it up, missed opportunities, because, and I keep going back to this, in the fourth quarter, Carolina was down 17-10. They had the ball inside the LSU 40, 7.5 minutes to go. That was the drive where Carolina came up on the wrong end of the fourth down. They threw the ball to Dre Jacobs. Mansour Delaney ends up knocking the ball away. Good man coverage there. And Carolina turns the ball over. LSU would go down to kick the field goal and make it an insurmountable 10-point lead at that point in time. But still, just like the Missouri game a couple weeks ago, you were in the game. You had opportunities there, despite how poorly you played on offense the entire night. You had your opportunities to go down there and take the lead and maybe walk out of there with a steal of a victory, and it didn't end up happening. And now you find yourself at 3-3, and looking ahead to what is still perhaps the toughest four-game stretch in all the country with all these other ranked teams, on your schedule following LSU. So what this means from here, we don't know. Again, you've made an offensive line change with Lonnie Teasley being moved out, Sean Elliott being brought in as your offensive line coach, and will that make a difference? We'll see. We'll certainly have to see, but it is frustrating nonetheless to see what has happened so far this year. And again, Saturday night was a perfect microcosm of just shooting yourself in the foot, too many self-inflicted mistakes, penalties, problems, all that kind of stuff to walk out of there with the victory. Again, so much to unpack from this game, and we'll certainly do that as the show does go along. Again, let us know your thoughts, 803-404-6100 on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines, as well as the Firehouse Subs text line. And again, just let us know your frustrations, as again, we were sitting here watching, and I was doing the watch party with Preston and Jen on the 107.5 Game YouTube channel. Appreciate everybody that tuned in and watched us do that on Saturday. Sorry the game wasn't more entertaining, but it was just agonizing to watch all these pre-snap penalties and things that we've been talking about through the entire season so far continue to rear their ugly heads as problems, especially in a week where you had an extra week to prepare. You had a bye week, an entire extra week to try and work out these kinks, and I get it. LSU is a tough environment, road environment, all that kind of stuff, but we shouldn't still be seeing this high and this amount of problems with your offensive line this late into the season. Right? And that's why the change was made. And again, there's a lot to unpack from this, a lot to dive into in terms of why this decision was made and what it means going forward. But we'll get to plenty of that. We'll take a break a little bit early here, and then we'll dive into the details of this game, what went wrong, and what this means going forward as the halftime show. Tyler Ed, Bill Gunner will be here along in a moment. Continue on your Reaction Monday on the game.
Welcome in on a Monday where there are things to discuss. Like the Mariners, right? We're going to get into the Mariners a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what we showed up to talk about today?
On list of topics, I think that's pretty far down the list. But yes, a good weekend for the Mariners.
Mariners, we could discuss that a little bit. There's all kinds of stuff to discuss, but I think locally there is a lot to discuss. There is a lot to break down and get into, whether it's the football game on Saturday night that was about as ugly as it could be, or you want to talk about the news that pops out yesterday. Lonnie Teasley, no longer employed as the offensive line coach for the University of South Carolina. We'll have Sean Elliott officially take over that role for the Gamecocks starting this week. Mason Zandy, former Gamecock offensive lineman who played for Sean Elliott, will join us coming up at 1:15 in the next hour. And I want to hear, Tyler, his perspective on playing for, like, the intensity, playing for Sean Elliott and the intangibles and the techniques and what was taught that way, because that's going to be the big question for me. What can you alternate, or what can you change, what can you alter in 6 days that makes you go, okay, this unit is now better than that unit?
I don't know if there's anything you can really alter in that short a span of time. I think and I get it, he's done it before and done it for some of the better teams that South Carolina's ever had, but I think you have to put a ceiling of expectations on Sean Elliott is your offensive line coach, because, again, you're this deep into the season. You have the personnel that you have. You've dealt with the injuries that you've had. So I'm not expecting it to suddenly just get leaps and bounds better. It can improve a little bit. And, my goodness, if you can just eliminate the pre-snap stuff, we'll consider that a victory at this point. But I don't think it's going to be this complete 180. And I mentioned this earlier, in the past 2 years, especially since Sean Elliott's been on staff, there's not been a more requested move by this fan base on our text lines, on message boards, Twitter, wherever you want to look, than fire Lonnie Teasley and make Sean Elliott your offensive line coach. And now it has happened on an interim basis at the very least, and we'll see what results it yields.
I don't know if you can. I think you can, but I'm with you.
We had planned on playing Bo.
Shane Beamer.
Shane wanted to interrupt.
Yeah. I think you can indeed make some adjustments in terms of maybe small blocking schemes, maybe just smaller things. I'm with you. The one thing that was catching my attention really on Saturday night, the frustration, the consternation of Shane Beamer with constant jumping off sides and just the mental penalties that have nothing to do with the other team.
Yeah. Here's one thing. If you're consistently getting called for, like, holding and stuff like that, that's within the play. That's football kind of stuff, and that's frustrating too. But when you're not even giving yourself the opportunity to start the play, and my goodness, I've never seen so many illegal snap penalties be called on one team, let alone one player, as I feel like we have with Boaz Stanley so far this year, who didn't start the game at center. Rodney Newsom did, and obviously had trouble right out of the gate with the fumble on the first play and then a bad snap to start the second drive as well. And, Boaz Stanley ends up having to come back in at center, which now he was your first option, then he became like your third option, so now you're back to your third option at center, and it's all a mess. But yeah, these things are mind-numbing, and it makes it that much worse when you're coming out of a bye, right? Because the bye week where, at least for the prior week, you didn't have any specific opponent to focus on, where you can get back to some fundamental things, figure out what the issues are, work on them, and try and get them corrected. And to come right out of the gate and just immediately have the same issues that have plagued this team for the first 5 weeks of the regular season makes you want to beat your head against the wall.
Yeah, and listen, I don't know if this is defense. I don't know how I'm supposed to phrase this. I think Shane Beamer is as patient a coach as there is. I think he gives coaches the benefit of the doubt all the way up as long as possible. That's why you really haven't seen him ever fire anybody. This was his first actual firing, Tyler Head, and I think it took a lot for him to arrive at this decision Saturday night.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had a situation 2 years ago where you didn't bring Montario Hardesty back, who was the running backs coach at the time, and that was the only real staff move that Beamer's made. Now he's moved some other guys around, and Justin Stepp changed position changed what positions he was coaching a couple years ago and decided to leave on his own. Obviously, Satterfield got hired by Nebraska a couple seasons ago. So, yeah, this is the first in-season firing that Shane Beamer's had to make. And as he mentioned, on Saturday in his press conference yesterday, this is something that's been a consistent issue. And Saturday was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. Mentioned watching it on his iPad on the way home and just kind of seeing the issues. Sellers was pressured on 65% of his dropbacks on Saturday. You had the 5 pre-snap procedural penalties on just the offensive line alone, and they did run the ball better, and you got to give them some credit for that. That was their best performance when it came to run blocking on the season, but that still wasn't enough to outweigh the negatives from the offensive line that were a big reason why Carolina was not able to muster up more than 10 points on Saturday.
Another game in which South Carolina offensively doesn't even hit 17. Obviously, with the Mike Shula offense now, we're 7 games in, and they've yet to go over 21 offensive points in this thing. And listen, this is who you are now.
Yeah.
This is who you are. That's who you are. That's who Mike Shula is. No offense to Mike Shula, but that's who you are. That's what your offense is. It's not creative. There's nothing setting up another play. There's open plays in the middle of the field that aren't being called. Yes, it is partially the offensive line's fault because they can't block for Lenore Sellers to give him time to take a drop, to get comfortable. You can tell in his footwork he's not comfortable at all. He's instantly looking to run and trying to get out of the way, Tyler. And it does. I still think the running backs. Now, I thought Matthew Fuller played.
He did. Well.
Better.
He had the highlight play of the night, the one touchdown he scored, long explosive run, and it kind of goes with the trend of what we've seen the past couple of weeks where he was getting the majority of the carries. Obviously got most of the carries at the very end of the game against Kentucky the other week, and this goes back to another frustrating point from Saturday night is he rips off this long run and doesn't touch the ball again until after halftime. And we can get into the specifics of what Shane said a little bit later, but it goes back to an issue that we've talked about a lot with Mike Shula is this lack of flow, right? Where you see things that work early in the game on scripted drives and stuff like that he just gets away from. And, you've been rotating through running backs, but you would think you'd want to ride the hot hand of what Matthew Fuller had done with the 2 carries that he had up to that point. And then he was on the field. It wasn't like he was just standing on the sidelines the entire time, but to not give him a touch again until after halftime, I don't get it.
No, there's a lot that we don't get with this offensive staff. I will say this. Let me be positive for 2 minutes. 2 positive, 1 positive. I think the receivers are coming on.
Fair.
They don't get a chance.
Sure.
They don't get a chance.
That was a good coverage team in LSU.
They don't get a chance. Brian Rowe impressed me. Vandravius Jacobs continues to impress me. Nick Harper did some nice things. The wide receivers are coming on. The problem is we have no clue about that. We have absolutely zero clue because they get absolutely zero chances. And to go back to your point, I don't know what the game plan is. It's a grab bag of stuff. We don't know what the identity is. We don't know what Mike Shula is trying to set up to run one play to come back and run a second play. There is no creativity whatsoever right now. It is very easy for defensive teams to defend South Carolina and to get out there and and then on top of all that, you're right. There's Matthew Fuller. We've been hearing about him, and he's going to get more carries, and he's going to get more snaps, and he's going to do this. And he rips off a 72-yard run. And, hey, kudos to the offensive line. They opened a hole, and he took advantage of it.
Job.
And everything went the way you wanted it. But then he doesn't even get a touch the remainder. He doesn't get a touch. That was with 25 seconds in the first quarter. He did that with 25 seconds in the first quarter, gave South Carolina the lead, and doesn't get a singular touch in the second quarter.
And Beamer had to tell Mike Shula to get him more touches at halftime, which, again, is his own layer of issues that we can dive into a little bit more. But the fact that I don't know if he's not consciously aware, not paying attention, I don't know. There's some kind of disconnect here on why there's a refusal to work with things that worked earlier in the game. And I get it. Mike Shula is a former head coach that is going to forget more football than any of us will ever know. But just as fans or media people watching, we can see where these issues are, and it's aggravating to see this happen over and over again.
Well, this is my opinion. I don't speak for Tyler. I don't speak for Ed Bird. I don't speak for Captain Dave. I don't speak for anybody here at 107.5 The Game. This is my opinion. This is talking with people. As a coordinator, you're focused on calling the plays.
Yes.
Now, is there a certain play that you might want to run for a certain player and you want to have that player designated to be in the game? I'll give you another example. On a pivotal 3rd down and long, you played the play without Vandrevius Jacobs and without Nick Harbor in the game.
Your 2 best options at receiver for the most part.
Like and I actually don't put that on Mike Shula, because Mike Shula's got a very, very limited time window to call a play. He doesn't have time to look out there and go, okay, what personnel's out there? All right, let me call this play now. All right, let me do this. You're counting on your position coaches, Marquell Blackwell, Mike Furry, so forth and so on, to have your guys in the game, the guys that need to make the plays. And so, and by the way, Rasul Faison was playing well. Let's be clear. But Rasul Faison was not, he wasn't some bum out there just, so, if he looks out there and, obviously Faison's out there, you go, okay, well, that's fine. Still would have loved to mix and match a little bit more, but I don't put it on the offensive coordinator unless the offensive coordinator says, hey, I got a specific play lined up for Nick Harbor or for Matthew Fuller. Please get him in the game. We're calling this next. I put the substitution pattern strictly on the position coach, and the position coach has to know what he is doing and who has the hot hand and who needs to be out there and who does not.
Yeah. And again, Fuller was on the field even after that long touchdown run in the second quarter. You can go back and see that, he's in there, but is still just not getting the touches. So again, there's so much to unpack from the issues of Saturday night, but it's just frustrating because the defense did enough, right? Defense made plays, generated takeaways, and kept LSU at bay for the most part. And again, they only scored 20 points, and we felt like, hey, if you can hold LSU to right around 20 points, you're at least going to have a chance in this game. And again, for a game that you were still within 1 score of midway through the 4th quarter, it felt like you were down by 3 touchdowns the entire time because the offense just couldn't generate enough. And here's the stat of stats from the game. You didn't run a single play inside the LSU 25. You got as far as their 26 at one point, but that was it. You did not get in the red zone specifically, but not even inside the final quarter of the field the entire night.
Yeah, you say that, and I will say I felt, now this is me, I can only speak for me, I felt South Carolina was still in it. Why? Well, because I've seen South Carolina had a propensity to hit the big play. For all of a sudden, something to break. For Nick Harbor, Vandrevius Jacobs to get behind somebody, for Lenoris Ellis to break off a very long run and set something up for South Carolina. So I kind of didn't feel that 17-10 was actually, in fact, 34-10. I do want to read you this because I want to toot my own horn. Are you into horn tooting?
Sure, go for it.
You into a little horn tooting?
Yeah.
All right. This is what I wrote on thebigspur.com. Was very proud of myself. This is on Thursday and was produced on Friday, my prediction of the game. Now, I had LSU 28-17. I was close. I had 20-17. All right, 20-10. I said I had the Gamecocks losing a fairly tight one, and nothing has changed my opinion. I don't expect the run game to find itself against the Tigers' defense. I was a little wrong on that. But while I think the defense will hold its own, which they did, I think depth is an issue, and they will give out in the final 10 minutes, leading me to believe that LSU would score basically a game-clinching touchdown. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it there. And again, when your defense is playing well enough, at some point they are going to get worn down, and making sure I got this right, because I think after South Carolina failed on the 4th down is when they went on the long drive that ended up kicking the field goal to put the game out of reach at that point in time. Yeah, that was 10 plays, 64 yards. So, yeah, you can't blame the defense as much for that because they had done so much up to that point to keep you in the game. When you fail to get another conversion there on offense that turns the ball over, at that point they're gassed, they're worn down, and they can only do so much.
Would also be remiss if we didn't, at least here early on in the program, talk about the fake punt that was not a fake punt.
Yeah.
A second year in a row where something very odd happens, and at least as we sit here, maybe you've called it at 12:25 on a Monday. There is no explanation for why this play was called off.
Because Carolina, I think, ran on Nick Harbor late, which I get it. You're allowed. The other side is allowed to substitute, but typically when that happens, as Beamer explained after the game, you'll have an official standing in front of the ball, which prevents you from snapping it. When the official's standing between the center, long snapper in that situation, and the guy taking the snap, in this case it was Mason Love, that says, hey, it's not going to happen. he is standing behind him. It's not Mason Love's job to turn around and say, okay, is he giving me the thumbs up? Because when you're nobody's in front of you, that tells everybody that you're clear to play. They snapped the ball. They had it. Get the ball out. You got the first down. Whistles being blown at that point in time. And look, this was a horrible week for SEC officiating once again, and we may not even have time to get into all that until maybe tomorrow or something like that. But just another head-scratching example of what are we doing, and another frustrating situation where the officials don't have to explain themselves afterwards because they get to go out and, head back to their hotels, have dinner, and fly back home the next day without having to say a word about what exactly they did wrong in there because they clearly screwed something up.
803-404-6100. Now, like Tyler and I, we don't need to tell you anything you didn't see. Y'all have eyes.
Yep.
We don't need to come in here and start, killing everybody. Y'all have eyes. You saw everything. You have opinions. Feel free to weigh in on them. Whether you want to call in today and vent a little bit, 803-404-6100. Whether you want to text in. You guys, ladies, y'all have eyes. You saw what you saw. Feel free to call in and get a little angry, get a little stuff off your chest. It's more of a Monday afternoon therapy. Totally understand. Let's get to some of these text messages. Texter weighs in. Two things. Dead ball, pre-snap, post-snap penalties are the most egregious and unforgivable mistakes a football team can make. This is always 100% coaching. It is coach's fault when that happens. Number two, glad to see Sean Elliott with more new responsibilities. He should have been given 2 years as a head coach, and Muschamp should have never stepped on campus. Another texter weighs in, and I agree with. How does the center of all people continue to false start?
How does the center not know the snap count on the first play after 2 weeks off?
Good count.
I don't know.
Another texter points out a game from yesterday. Oh, Rico Dowdle. Don't forget what Rico Dowdle does behind an actual offensive line. Talent is there, and it's always the offensive line trouble, and that goes back 10 years. Michael weighs in. I knew Shula would not understand how to develop a scheme for Sellers. He looks as if he's determined to make Sellers a pocket passer. Let's see here. Rich weighs in. Fuller struggles in blitz protection. Beamer cited that as one reason Fuller wasn't in more often. At some point, you got to live with this.
Yeah, listen.
You got to live with it.
You do, and I don't doubt that what Attaway's the better blocking option there at running back, but still, adjust what you're doing to where you're at least putting the ball in his hands and making things happen, right? Like, if he is your best option at running back, find ways to get him the ball. That's my only request here. 803-404-61. Keep sending in your text. I'll get to a lot more of these as a lot of y'all are weighing in. Again, feel free. Vent. Get it out of your system. It's reason to be angry right now. 3-3 on the season. But it's not a 3-3 where you're like, man, they've played. Last year's 3-3, and we'll get to this. Last year's 3-3 felt different than this year's 3-3. Yeah, you felt like you were kind of frothing at the mouth to be in a better position and improve going forward, which they did. But now it's not. It's like, well, you're lucky to be 3-3 kind of thing. 803-404-6100. We'll continue along here reanalyzing South Carolina and LSU. You're listening to the Halftime Show. Bill Gunner for Old Timey Meat Market. Well, all right, the Gamecocks did not win on Saturday night, but you know who did win? The Gunner family. That's right, with some incredible old-timey meat market hamburgers. That's right, the bacon cheddar burgers, an absolute success over at the Gunner household. And that's not all they've got. Trust me, they got phenomenal hamburgers. But if you're looking for something a little bit different, like a fantastic steak, maybe some Italian chicken skewers, they got some chicken breast marinated in their Pirates Italian Gold.
Everything that you might want is sitting right there at one of the 3 locations. South Congaree, the St. Andrews Road location in Lexington, or in Irmo, or the Lexington store. Trust me, Old Timey Meat Market is the gunner go-to when you start the weekend and get ready for football, and you need to make it the same for you. So stop by one of those 3 locations today. Stop by, tell them Bill Gunner sent you.
so proud of our guys, Todd, and the way they fought, but absolutely sick to my stomach that we didn't win that football game to be as efficient as we were in so many ways, to win the turnover battle, to run the ball well, I felt like, to win the time of possession. But, you know, you're exactly right. When you're on the road against a good team, you've got to finish. You got to finish drives. And we didn't do a great job of finishing. Give LSU credit for getting stops when they needed it. But, you know, sick to my stomach that we didn't do a better job of finishing ourselves.
Yeah, Coach.
Shane Beamer on Saturday night with Todd Ellis, and LSU didn't stop them. South Carolina stopped themselves.
Yeah,
South Carolina put the brakes on their drives on their own.
Yeah, pretty much. And again, I lost track of how many times they found themselves in 3rd and 15s, 3rd and 18s, or whatever because of self-inflicted penalties or situations where the play call didn't make sense and you didn't get what you needed on 1st and 2nd down and put yourself in 3rd and long. Again, a frustrating game to watch, frustrating game to analyze here when we were doing our watch-along party. And again, despite all that, the defense played well enough to put you in a position to still have an opportunity to at the very least tie the game there late in the 4th quarter, and couldn't capitalize on that. A poor play call on the 4th down there where you tried to get the ball to Jacobs in the one-on-one with Delane that obviously didn't end up working, and that was kind of the microcosm for the night where, again, you walk out of there with 3-3, but it's a whole lot different 3-3 than where you're at a year ago, to where the optimism is not as high as it was.
Yeah, that's the thing, is the defense has put you in position to win.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to give moral victories or to have silver linings, because the defense has made mistakes. Don't get me wrong. I kind of called it. The defense would give up some runs on Saturday night, but they would bow up. Now, you can't count on 2 turnovers inside the 15-yard line every time.
Nope.
That's a fluky type thing. But the bottom line is the defense bowed up, Tyler, and here you are again sitting with in a position to win. I will say it again. You're going to hear me say it for the rest of the year. I love where this defense is going. I love what the growth and the development, and I love what the defense is doing, and I think they're going to continue to get better. The problem right now is the offense, and several of y'all are weighing in. Ron weighs in and says, does Shula make it to the end of the season? I'm sure there are plenty of people asking that question right now. Here's the thing. I guess you have somebody else on there that can call plays.
I don't know who that would be.
Sean Elliott's the closest.
Well, he's now the offensive line coach. He's got a lot on his plate.
Well, and so I think that's why you see Mike Shula, I don't know if get a pass is the way to do this, but that's why I think Mike Shula gets a pass, is because I'm not sure if you've got anybody else out there. Now, the question is the legitimate question is going to be, and it's 3-3, and there's 6 games to go. There's a lot of football to be played. But I'll tell you this, coming out of Saturday night, the questions about South Carolina football, not just in 2025, but in 2026 and moving forward, do you have Lenore Sellers? What players are sticking around? I mean, it's not Shane Beamer's fault. This is not a Shane Beamer thing, but we now know with the transfer portal and how things work.
Sure.
Who do you have coming back? I mean, there's a lot going on where South Carolina, to me, has reached a crossroads once again in their program of what are you about to be.
And that's the frustrating part about the offense this year is you have, I think without a doubt, the most talented quarterback you've ever had in program history. Then there's a reason why he was on Heisman list and projected first-round pick and all that kind of stuff going into the year because of what his abilities are. And if you can salvage this year and even go 6-6 and make the Birmingham Bowl or the Gasparilla Bowl or something like that, it's still going to be looked at as, wow, that's what we did with potentially the final year of Lenore Sellers' eligibility. And I don't know what his thought process is on wanting to come back or transferring or going to the pros or whatever, but there's a very strong likelihood you're not going to have him back next year. And at the very least, maybe he's going to the NFL or something like that. And then it's back to the drawing board of, okay, now you're starting over at quarterback. And then what does that mean? So it just adds to the frustration of this year that you feel like you're wasting what should have been an even better year for Lenore Sellers compared to last year, where he did hit his stride down the stretch last year. And you've seen in pockets that potential and that ability there with his throwing against Missouri, with the way he ran the ball against Kentucky. And he had some moments on Saturday night as well where he made some plays happen, but it just hasn't been put together for an entire game on both fronts yet.
Yeah, to me, so you got Saturday night's game. There's so many little tentacles to this particular game. Okay, you've cut one off in Lonnie Teasley, and you've moved Sean Elliott to the offensive line coach. Okay, we think that might solve. We think that might solve things. Now you got to focus on the rest of the season. 6 games, 4 of which are just ridiculous here when you talk about number 4 A&M. Was it number 5? It was there was a 5 Bama. I looked earlier, but it's basically I think it's 5 Mississippi, 6 Bama. 4, 5, 6.
Yep.
4, 5, 6 is your next 3 games.
Yep.
And it's just absolutely ridiculous what you've got coming down the pipe. But I don't think it's just it's a one-season kind of deal. Like, as you just said, there is a level of urgency of they've got to get to a bowl at 6-6. And the reason I say that is because you keep guys in your facility. You get those extra practice times. I don't know what the future of Lenore Sellers holds. Remember the way I believe it is structured, Sellers has got an $8 million NIL deal, but it's broken into 2 years. 2 years, $4 million. So it's not unrealistic that he comes back. I don't know the exact money I don't know where he's at in the draft and how it would work and what would happen.
Yeah.
So it's not, we're not talking like, okay, well, he's definitely gone just yet. Do I think he's gone? Yes, probably, but he's not gone.
Well,
but we're at a situation, going back to the Mike Shula situation, going back to the offensive situation, going back to not just what happens. You can't fix the next offensive line-wise, you can fix the next 6 games. Offensively, you can't fix the next 6 games.
No, you can't. You have what you have. And again, Shula's not getting fired in season because I don't know who would end up calling the plays there. So you have what you have. And I'll go back to a point that, Shane, because Jack asked him this after one of the games a couple weeks ago where, hey, you guys are last in the SEC in a lot of offensive categories. And his answer at that time was, well, a lot of teams haven't played quality competition, so those numbers may be a little bit skewed. Well, now you're halfway through the year. Everybody is in the thick of conference play now. It is what it is. You are legitimately one of the, if not the worst offenses in the SEC, and will continue to be that as the season goes along. How can you salvage and scrap around that to try and find yourself in these games? I don't know, but you have what you have at this point.
No, you're right. You got what you got, and now you got to kind of play with it. So we'll see where they go from that. Again, several of y'all, I want to get to y'all because you have eyes and you want to weigh in. Another texter says Sellers is not ready for the NFL. He has potential, but is yet to develop to do so yet. Justin from Gaston says we have the talent to beat every team left on our schedule if we can play a comprehensive game. That means players fixing the stupid mistakes saved Shula figuring out how to call the game when we are off script.
Yeah, and look, your defense is going to give you the opportunity in all these games. I just don't know where the faith is in the offense. They're going to be able to get out of their own way to score enough points to win against a lot of very good defenses coming down the pipe here. And yeah, for whatever reason, it seems like after those opening drives of the game, that's where Shula kind of gets erratic with his play calls and not having the continuity that you want to see. And again, it's a thing at this point. It's not going to suddenly change overnight. You are what you are, and you hope you can manage something in these final 6 games to salvage finding a way to get to a bowl game somehow. We'll see.
Another texter weighs in and says it's as simple as what Beamer did a few years ago with Satterfield. Simplify the playbook and play loose.
I mean, he's got a pretty small play sheet if you didn't see on Saturday. I don't know how much more simple you can get.
803-404. Best thing and worst thing South Carolina ever did was join the SEC. Association doesn't mean one successful. Since 92, South Carolina has been the #1 conference coattail rider, cashing checks, taking quality L's, and hoping just to get bowl eligible. We'll come back. I'll wrap up the hour. It's the halftime show. was a relatively easy hour. People always say, Tyler, they're like, man, it must suck when South Carolina loses. Now you got to go do the radio show. I'm like, actually, makes for an easy radio show.
We get more interactions when people are upset than we do when people are happy. That's something that I've noticed. Unfortunately, this year and 2 years ago, there was a lot more unhappy than happy. But here's the thing: is it does get to the point, though, and this is just how I've noticed it, where people stop caring, right? Where the frustration lasts for a period of time, but then when you just keep losing and keep having the same problems, people just eventually just stop reacting to it because they become numb.
We haven't hit there. It'll be a while.
Not there yet.
I've seen where that come. I went through the Muschamp era. I know where that's coming. Let's get to. I want a lot of y'all to have an opinion today because it's a reaction Monday. It's a therapy Monday. There's an anger Monday associated with it. Texter weighs, Jack weighs in. Every time the camera goes to Shula, he's got his readers on and looking at a play sheet. He needs to get the flow of the game in the first quarter and only call the plays that work for the remainder of the game.
I don't disagree. I mean, it's one of those things, and this isn't the only coach I've seen this with, but sometimes the answers aren't always on the play sheet, right? There's a level of coaching and, adjustability that you have that you can't look down on a play sheet to find sometimes that, again, I kind of got that same thought watching Shula on Saturday. It's like, hey, man, sometimes the answers aren't just on the printed, not even laminated piece of paper you have in front of you.
Go with what you kind of...
Go with what you feel. And again, the interaction of talking with your other coaches, or hey, if again, this goes back to my point of what Beamer said about the Matthew Fuller thing. Like, if you want him to get the ball, he's right there. Go over there and tell Shula, hey, let's get 28 the ball more. He's not in the press box. He's 10 feet away from you. You've also got the head cassette communication. You can tell him that way too. Like, maybe it's not that simple. I don't know, but it's kind of like you didn't have to wait till halftime to say that.
I don't know. You say it's not that simple. I'll never forget being up at a Vanderbilt game in about 05 or 06. And South Carolina had the ball at about the 4 or 5 yard line, and Steve Spurrier was calling plays, and they couldn't seem to quite get the play in. And he just looked out at Blake Mitchell and held up 4 fingers and pointed, and basically was like, 4, throw it, and they scored a touchdown. So
sometimes it is that simple.
Yeah. Justin from Gaston weighs in and says, maybe hiring an advisor to help with in-game play calling to get us through the season. The problem is our playbook relies on a pro-style quarterback and a solid offensive line. We have neither. How do we adjust for the midseason without overhauling the offense? Shula doesn't seem to be able to figure that out, and it shows once we go off script. So we need to bring someone in to help with the chess game during games.
You're not wrong. I mean, look, all these points of frustration are very valid when you're this deep into the season and your numbers are legitimately at the bottom of the conference. There's no thought about this offense that's wrong at this point.
Justin weighs in, and I did want to address this. He says Shane Beamer didn't have a choice. He has to get a new voice in there for offensive line. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Beamer might make more changes this season. Do you think Shane Beamer will be on the hot seat next year? Relatively speaking, warm. I can see warm, but no, he's not getting fired. He's not going to be on the hot seat. Shane Beamer's got 2 years left, a minimum, barring something off the field nefarious. Shane Beamer's hot. There is no hot seat. There is no fear of losing his job. He's done enough here that he's perfectly fine. I would have said that, and we'll get into the next hour.
Yeah.
Next hour we talk hot seats, and
nothing is impossible in college sports these days. I will say, what Beamer did last year has bought you some time, right? Like you're not on the hot seat right now. Now, again, if we get to this point halfway through next year, we're still having these problems. That's a different conversation, but his job is safe for the time being. I feel pretty comfortable in saying that.
Keep weighing it in. A lot of y'all with opinion. I'm trying to get to as many of them as possible because certainly on a day like today, you deserve to have your opinion heard. Tyler and I can gas bag here for the next 12 hours all week long. And there's certainly a lot to talk about. Mason Zandy, former offensive line player for Sean Elliott, set to join us at 1:15, and I want to hear his thoughts on playing for Sean Elliott. Well, it was a wild weekend in Baton Rouge. Hopefully, a lot of you had a good trip, though. A good time down there. Did you? I have not talked to any of our roving reporters, our scabs that get out there and we send them around. Have we talked to anybody who went down?
Yeah, Jack and Elijah both said it lived up to the billing of what it's always, been said to be in terms of loud atmosphere and all that kind of stuff. And, obviously the fans were nice and lubricated by the time it ended up being 7:55 when the game kicked off. So darn near 8 o'clock local time here in, Columbia. So it seemed like it was the LSU that it always been hyped up to be.
I will say I've heard in talking with people, it was not the loud, raucous environment, but we talked about that. Their fan base is not in the same
right
place that they've been in. And quite frankly, when you rip off a 72-yard run, you go up 7-3, that can tend to take a little bit of the crowd out of it.
And listen, I'm sure that, their call-in shows today are probably not all full of joy and cheer either, because they had their own issues offensively on Saturday night that I'm sure continue to frustrate that fan base. So despite the fact they're a top 10 team, only have one loss of the year and all the goals still ahead of them, they're not exactly thrilled with everything that they've seen out of their team this year.
No, and they didn't play good. Let's be clear. That was LSU. That game set football back.
It did. It was ugly, sloppy, boring. I want to give credit to Garrett Nussmeier. That's a tough dude, right? Garrett Nussmeier went out there and he got beat up for 4 quarters on Saturday, and there were a couple times when I thought for sure he was going to finally come out of the game. They were going to have Trot Van Buren on as the backup, but he stayed in there, and he took his lumps, and again, he's not fully healthy going into the game anyway, but he stood in there and took his punishment, so I want to give him credit for that.
I'm with you on that. He was a warrior on Saturday night, and it looked like, now I don't know if he had issues with his leg or his knee. It looked like South Carolina. It's kind of like a WWE fight. They went after the knee early on.
You work the injured area of your opponent to try and demobilize them.
And that played a little bit of a role. But you're right, he kept bouncing back. I don't think he did anything that was overly spectacular. Now, he had the big run.
He did.
He had the big run that was pivotal down around their goal line. But
that was one of those situations where, I know that hurt. But, I guess the adrenaline of the moment allowed him, because the way he was limping before that, I can't believe he ran that far that effectively.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. You like you said, you get the play gets going. All of a sudden, that pain subsides very quickly, and you're able to take off. But Garrett Nussmeier did that. But, yeah, I mean, no offense to Jay and Elijah, I don't think that's our two wild party cats. And I got to admit, in terms of party atmospheres, and again, I've been to all but Oklahoma. Well, I haven't been to Texas, but Oklahoma and Missouri, everywhere South Carolina's been, I've been to all of them. Now, you got to do LSU right.
Okay.
Let me be very clear about your trip to LSU, because with Vanderbilt, you just go to Nashville.
Sure.
And it's just Vanderbilt, and then you just head on over to the game, and they actually do a good job with the pregame, and it's a good little tailgate. LSU, you got to hit New Orleans.
Elijah did go to New Orleans on Sunday for the Saints game.
Okay, well,
so he did make his way down there.
Well, you got to hit New Orleans on Thursday or Friday.
Okay.
You got to go down there, and you got to experience. If you haven't experienced Bourbon Street, and I'm not even talking about going and experiencing the complete debauchery. I'm not talking about going and experiencing the ones where you really come back and question your religion.
Sure.
I'm just talking about going down and experiencing Bourbon Street as for what it is. But you got to do it at some point in your life. Really got to do it at some point in your life. And then you hop on, I think it's I-4, and you cruise on up. I think it's I-4 or I-10, I can't remember. And you cruise on up. Not a bad drive, about an hour and a half. And you get up there, especially on a 7:45 game. You can get up there, you get set in the parking lot. They've got a good little tailgating set up, and you get going, and it's a blast. And it is an absolute blast. And we've done it. I've done it twice during my lifetime. I have not seen South Carolina come away with a victory, but we've done it twice, and it's I've seen some stuff, man. I've seen some things, buddy. But yeah, that's what you got to do down there. I still remember running into the Lindsays, which you'd say, like, well, that's cool, except for the fact that they were playing.
Oh, yeah. That's concerning.
Well, yeah, it was different, but nonetheless, yeah, and that's a fun trip. And I believe what are we going back in 2 years? Is it? Yeah.
I've not memorized the home and aways for the next 4 years yet, but that sounds right.
Have to look that back up, but might be four before the Gamecocks head back to Baton Rouge. But I would encourage you to go. I would encourage you to go from a standpoint of a football trip, like
Right.
a football going and seeing that stadium. And to go back to your point, what I kind of understood was the fact that that fan base they're questioning things. And Tyler, let's flip it a second. We're gonna go to big picture football coming up in the next segment because oh boy, did some stuff happen this weekend.
Sure.
But that fan base in and of itself has a million questions that they're asking themselves on Monday. They're not coming out of that feeling all warm and juicy.
No, and again, Garrett Nussmeier, turns the ball over a couple times. They have a fumble on the goal line. Again, their defense played well, and their defense obviously held South Carolina to only 10 points and never let them cross over the 25-yard line. So you consider that a pretty good night, all things considered defensively. But yeah, it's that offense that's still a problem for them. And again, they still got tons of tough games coming down the stretch for themselves. And I know they're still in a good position right now with only one loss, being the 10th-ranked team in the country. But I don't see them staying there very long unless they just drastically get better on offense. And again, if Garrett Nussmeier was feeling better going to that game, taking the beating that he took on Saturday night, I imagine he's probably feeling worse than maybe he has the entire year because physically he just looked in rough shape as that game wore on. So what effect does that have going forward? I don't know. Obviously one of their top receivers was injured going into that game as well. They have offensive line problems. So yeah, not a whole lot of optimism probably coming away from things for the LSU contingent down there, certainly.
And as if that's not enough, they go to Vanderbilt.
That's right.
This coming weekend, you get the Commodores. Commodores coming off of a bye week too, so Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt. That game will be on noon on ABC. Real quick news note coming out just here in the last few minutes. South Carolina, Alabama will kick at 3:30 on ABC.
Cool.
So that will be the start. So good.
Finally get a mid-afternoon game.
I was going to say, I don't know how y'all feel about that. I think we all anticipated a night game, but 3:30 ABC kick for the Gamecocks and the Commodores coming up in 2 weeks. Reminder, this week set for 12:45 against Oklahoma. We'll get back into that Oklahoma game coming up here in just a few minutes in the next segment and start to look around college football. It was a wild, wild weekend. But the game against the Crimson Tide now officially scheduled for 3:30. I believe nope, that's not going to be a fair week. That's not going to. This is the last fair weekend.
Yeah. The Oklahoma game is the only fair game we get this year.
Okay, so all that going for us, and we will get back into some of all that. Is it was kind of a wild time. Chris weighs in and says a New Orleans trip must is a trip to Pat O'Brien's and throw back a hurricane or two. Well, you do three.
Okay.
You're trying to figure out what state you're in and where you're going.
My wife and I are trying to visit new states every single year, and I've always wanted to go to New Orleans, so that might be the next one on the docket next year.
Okay, yeah, no, it's worth. And that reminds me, I was trying to find the future scheduling for South Carolina to see when the next trip to Baton Rouge does come rolling around. Because I got to admit, put it on your calendars to make sure and attend that one moving forward, not just from a, hey, South Carolina might win standpoint, but from a go see a football cathedral of college football there. 803-404-6100. I've said it. I want to give y'all a voice today because Tyler and I have eyes. Tyler and I have 12 hours to discuss and rant and rave about this, but it's kind of a football therapy Monday.
Let it all out.
Let it all out.
Event session.
Yeah. Duncan weighs in. Guys, I'm just happy to see Coach grow a pair. I really think he's growing as a head coach.
A fair assessment. And I think one of the common criticisms of Shane Beamer with the way he's handled his staff is the value of relationships, right? And again, he's only ever moved on from one guy, that being Montero Hardesty. So I think there was the question of could he pull the trigger when he needs to? And again, what you saw on Saturday night, it wasn't everything, but it was the final straw to moving on from Lonnie Teasley. And as he's brought up, Lonnie Teasley was a great recruiter, and there's no denying that. And I said this earlier, I would rather have an offensive line coach that's only going to bring in, at best 3-star talent, but get more out of them than a guy that's bringing in 4- and 5-star talent and not letting those guys live up to what their potential should be. So that's the risk you're taking by dinging yourself a little bit in the recruiting game. But if you can get somebody that can get better results on the field, then at the end of the day, it's going to be worth it.
Offensive lineman is such. Now, listen, let me not lie to you. Do not sit here and go, oh, yeah, I'd rather. Offensive lineman is a developmental position. But
Yes,
let me
it
tell
is.
you, the more 4- and 5-stars you bring in that are slightly developed,
Better off you're going to be.
the better off you're going to be. Having guys like Josiah Thompson and Darius Gray and Trevon Ball and Tree Babalade, they make your job easier. Now it's your job to convince them and make them a little bit better. But it's definitely a lot easier than bringing in a 2- or a 3-star. I go back old Lemuel Jean-Pierre, but he obviously developed and had a nice cup of tea with the Seattle Seahawks there in the NFL. So I do totally get it. Corey Robinson was another 2-star that got into the NFL and had a very nice run formerly under Eric. That was under Eric. That was under Eric Wolford. So, real quick, South Carolina will travel to LSU again in 2029. Mark calendars accordingly.
So got a little time.
That year, mark calendars accordingly. You can go to LSU and you can go to Texas.
Okay, there you go.
So, 803-404-6100. Let me get back to some of these text messages here. Is how a couple of y'all, again, I want to give people a voice today to weigh in. If you want to call in and shed your voice, certainly would love to hear that as well. Texter weighs in. I'm jacked up. The last time we had a good offensive line was under Sean Elliott. Fix this one thing and we're good. We will beat Oklahoma.
I sure hope so.
Count me in that thing. I got to say, Sunday, I was like, man, football game Saturday, oh boy. And then to get the news about Sean Elliott, now I'm kind of like.
Oklahoma didn't look great against Texas on Saturday. Mateer clearly is not back to full strength.
I want to see what this offensive line, because I do think that there's, like, there was a play in particular, Tyler, where Boaz Stanley's the center, and did he look right? And a guy ran right through him to the left?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, there's small things here that I feel like they can just be like, hey,
yeah, we
got to stop this. Like, I don't feel like I still contend it's not necessarily a talent issue. There's a scheme or a voice. I don't know what it is.
Sure.
So count me in that Sean Elliott being back, and I know it's 6 days to get it right, but there's something that makes me believe this isn't going to transform this team into a team that wins 6 straight football games, but I feel like it's going to enhance the team a little bit.
We can only hope. We'll see.
803-404-6100. We'll come back. Big picture, college football. Boy, turns out making a playoff doesn't quite mean what it used to, huh? We'll tell you about that. You're listening to the early game. Bill Gunner for Mid-State Roofing. We're 30 long years. They've been the leader in the roofing and waterproofing industry, and it is that proven history that is your assurance that their professionals will get the job done in a safe, a pleasing, and the correct manner. to most importantly, keep your operation dry and running long into the future. Now, 30 years, again, is a long time to be the proven leader, but one of the reasons is how they treat you, the customer, whether it's your home, whether it's your business. Mid-State Roofing wants to be there for you, and they are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's right, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mid-State Roofing is ready to take your phone call. You just got to give them a phone call. 803-356-1919. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you will speak with someone. If you've got a leak, let Mid-State Roofing take a peek. We'll get to some big picture college football here. James Franklin heading over to the unemployment line. He's joined by Trent Dilfer. They're joined by Brent Pry and Deshaun Foster and Mike Gundy and who knows who else. Billy Napier, as of 1:20, still employed.
For the time being, that's coming. They got a bye week coming up after, I think, this upcoming game. But, yeah, he'll be joining them in the unemployment line soon. Though, as we know, none of those guys are hurting for cash right now.
No, yeah, they're all doing much better than us. Speaking of a guy who's doing much better than us, not hurting for cash, just out there throwing it around like it's no problem. Welcome in former Gamecock offensive lineman, a man who knows all about playing for Sean Elliott. How about Mason Zandy, local product from Chapin High School? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I just want to tell you this. I'm in a good mood. Neither team is very good, but my Lexington Wildcats took down your Chapin Eagles on Friday night.
That's a little salt in the wound early, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I hadn't talked to you in a while. I may as well. And you're taller than me, and you're not in studio, and I can get away with that. And next time you see me out in public, you can just pummel me on the head.
I think your tune will change if you see him in person.
Yeah, he will. He'll handle me. Put me in some kind of pretzel. Good to hear from you. Real quick, before we had talked to you, it's been a while since we've had you on the program. But give everybody a quick update on what you're up to and how things are going.
Yeah, I'm living in Lexington. You know, my wife, 3 kids. I think right now my little boy Chelsea's at home listening to the radio with his mama. I think the kids are out of school, but I'm still working for Brown & Brown Insurance, on commercial insurance, just like any other washed-up college athlete.
You said the little one's listening to the radio?
Yeah, he's on fall break right now.
Give him a shout out. What's the little one's name? What's he doing?
His name's Chesley. He's right now he's at his great grandma's house having lunch.
Okay. All right. Well, kudos to him. Well, let's get to what you've seen. Let's I'm going to kind of walk you through some things here. 6 football games are in the pipe here. Your big picture is a guy who played left tackle, right tackle, played for Sean Elliott, but now you've had to watch what's been transpiring. What has Mason Zandy seen from the offensive line?
Frankly, I've seen a lack of discipline. You know, when you're hurt, maybe under-talented, and I can speak to being under-talented pretty fluently, but you've got to play the game with discipline. You got to know your assignments, and you can take an average talented guy with a ton of discipline, understands the play calls, understands what he's supposed to do and where he's supposed to be, and they can perform. They can be serviceable. But right now, I'm just not seeing a lot of discipline up front. Pre-snap penalties, that's non-negotiable. It shouldn't happen. I understand going on the road at night at LSU, but we also went on the road to Missouri, which I've had the pleasure of playing at, I think, 3 times in my career, and that's not a loud stadium at all compared to some of the other SEC venues. But they've just got to get back to fundamental, sound, disciplined football. And you're going to get beat. It happens. You know, you're going against some of the best athletes in the country, but more often than not, discipline will prevail.
Hey, Mason, thanks for taking some time. Obviously, we knew these communication issues were a problem throughout the first 5 games. You had a bye week, so a few extra days to focus in on fixing some of these issues, knowing you're going to a place like LSU and that tough environment. What does that bye week look like in terms of trying to fix these things? What is being done to try and correct these issues that obviously didn't work for Carolina on Saturday?
Well, first and foremost, Sean Elliott's now the offensive line coach, so that's one step that they took to correct that issue. And I think one thing I was speaking with some coworkers about that, and I can't speak to the former offensive line coach. I didn't play for him, but one thing about Coach Elliott's philosophy is thinking critically and making the right decisions under pressure. So being in the film room, I can think back to my days of him, you know, very spirited, very loud, you know, almost screaming at you to make sure that you have the right play call or the right assignment, and putting you on the clock. So it was ingrained in your brain, even in moments of watching film, that you have to think quickly and you have to make the right decision, because ultimately playing offensive line, you're five men operating at one position, and you've got to be in sync with one another. So that's where I think the biggest change is going to come from. I'm not saying that he's going to come in this week and change it all the way around. I mean, obviously you are in terms of personnel, but the added discipline, the animated voice that Coach Elliott has, he's going to bring some intensity to that offensive line. I think we'll see a change. May not be this week against Oklahoma, but we keep looking down the schedule, and I wouldn't be surprised if they perform better.
How quickly is it for him to make an adjustment? He's got 6 days, and from what you've seen in the issues to now, got to get ready for 12:45. You kind of mentioned that. How quickly is it? Is it as simple as techniques? Is it as simple as scheme? Is it as simple as calls? What do you see?
I think the first thing that you have to address is the mentality. You have to put up exactly on the board what we are. Who are we today? Well, right now we're an underperforming offensive line that's given up 20 sacks in 6 games. As a team, as a whole, I think we're second to last in penalties. I think there's one other team that's worse than us in that department, and a large part of that comes from the offensive line. I think we had 2 or 3 snap infractions the other night, 3 false starts, so that makes up for almost 50% of our penalties. I think the first thing we address is the mentality. Know who we are, and then from there, how are we going to get better? And I think a lot of that comes back to almost teaching and gaming the plan back like we were in fall camp. It's got to be the basics. It's got to be understanding snap count, getting in rhythm with the guy next to you. And then I think a large part is the offensive line taking ownership. And I don't listen to a lot of the post-game press conferences if any of those guys have spoken to it, but they got to spend some time together. There's got to be some player ran practices with those 5 guys. And, I mean, frankly, it needs to be all of the offensive linemen in there because of the rotation that we've had. But they've got to get on the same page together. They got to buy in as well. I don't know if they have or haven't, but it sure feels like they could buy in a little bit more.
About 2 more minutes here. Looking ahead, what gives you any reason, if anything, if there is anything, for optimism about this offensive line going forward with Sean Elliott now?
The optimism is, obviously we have a few home games coming up. That helps a lot. I'm not sure the status of injury on a couple of the guys that were out last week. I think Shane Beamer mentioned that they were questionable at best for this week. But from an optimism perspective, I think that having a new voice in that room, having somebody that's really, I mean, Coach Elliott's on fire 24/7 when it comes to football. And if you can't meet his intensity, it'll sort itself out pretty quickly. And he'll take a guy that maybe, and I speak to this because I lived it, that wasn't as talented, wasn't as highly recruited, wasn't a big name player, instill his discipline, instill his mentality in them, and get the best out of them. And that's what Coach Elliott's done his entire career. He's gotten the best out of players, even if maybe they weren't the most athletically gifted or most talented player.
About a minute left, and Mason, I apologize. It was short notice today to get you on, but I appreciate you finding some real quick time. What do you expect this coming Saturday from this offensive line? Status quo, slight improvement? What are you looking for? What does Mason Zandy look for Saturday afternoon against Oklahoma where you're like, all right, there's a step in the right direction?
Pre-snap penalties. That's going to be the biggest indicator for us this coming Saturday. If we can take the pre-snap penalties, I think we had 5 or 6 last week at LSU. You're at home, so crowd noise shouldn't be an issue. Nerves shouldn't be an issue. You woke up in your town. So if we can take that down, let's say maybe one. I really don't like false starts at home. That's kind of BS in my opinion. But if we see a tick down there, then we know we're trending in the right direction.
Mason, again, I apologize. I know it was very, very short notice. I reached out to you this morning, so we had limited time today. I will definitely look forward to getting you back on next week to get your assessment of what you saw from Sean Elliott. But thank you for taking time out today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Former Gamecock offensive lineman Mason Zandy. Again, it was very quick because I had to reach out to him, but he did a phenomenal job. We'll get him back next week. We'll finish up, or we'll roll on halftime show on 107.5 The Game. Oh, flying by on a Monday, October the 13th. Bill Gunner, Tyler Head, producer Ed Bird here, as we have had plenty to break down and assess. And again, I want to get to your opinions and your thoughts. So if you want to weigh in, 803-404-6100. Tyler and I have opinions. We have eyes. We're not going to try and lie to you and sugarcoat anything, but I want to hear y'all's opinion today. It's kind of like an open show to you. Texter says, glad to see Shane Beamer make the change. He does tend to stay with coaches too long. For me, Marcus Satterfield is the most obvious example. I don't care what Beamer says. You will never convince me that the coach who had to be reminded to play his best players against Kentucky went out the next week and hung 60 on the number 4 team in the country.
That is still the great debate all these years later, is who called plays against Tennessee back in 2022 with the Satterfield thing. And I guess we'll never know the answer, right?
Always a mystery.
Always a mystery. There's always a mythical figure roaming the sidelines somewhere that when things suddenly flip a switch on one side of the ball, and this isn't just South Carolina thing, this happens all over the place. When one unit magically gets better, it's always this unknown person that is the reason for why that happens. So I don't know, but it's still a mystery.
I think this is a positive tweet, or at least a compliment. If Shane Beamer and Sean Elliott have heard any of this show the last hour and a half particularly, we will beat Oklahoma on Saturday. Tyler, I'm calling it. South Carolina wins.
Okay. I've still got to do my research into Oklahoma as the week goes along. I watched a good bit of their game against Saturday against Texas. They did not look good. They didn't look like the Oklahoma that had run into that game undefeated at that point, but we'll see. I do like it being a home. It's an early kick coming off a rivalry game, so you do have those things to your advantage, and hopefully South Carolina can use it to their advantage.
Jacob weighs in. Jacob says, we made the right move. Beamer made the right move, but it's frustrating as fans because this should have been done a year ago, and now this year is a wash. We all saw zero development the last 2 years. Us fans aren't blind. Shula had zero feel for the game. It's like he's drawing plays out of a hat. 803-404-6100. Another one. And, yeah, we haven't discussed this, and thankfully it got kind of lost in the game a tad.
Sure.
Texter weighs in and says, what about the kicking game? That field goal wasn't even close.
Yeah. Which, by the way, William Jones has only missed 2 field goals on this year. Feels like he's missed a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But that one was pretty egregiously bad. And, again, if you have 3 more points there, then that changes the way you look at the rest of the game. Obviously, it didn't end up happening, but you're getting to a point where I feel like kicking's not something you can rely on very much right now, unfortunately.
803-404-6100. Chick weighs in and says, Teasley turned 4- and 5-star linemen into 1-stars. If I hear the defense shot the A-gap one more time, I think I'm going to be sick. I hope Beamer can take a real look at the coaching staff and make some difficult decisions. The season has been derailed by bad coaching staff. By bad coaching. And again, that's why I want y'all to have your opinion today. There's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of opinions out there, and I certainly want y'all to have them because there's a lot going on right now with this football team, 3-3. And it's not how they got to 3. It's not that they're 3-3. It's how we've arrived at 3-3 with the way of the play.
Yeah, and again, with how many issues you've had, you've still been in 2 of those games late in the fourth quarter in Missouri and LSU on Saturday where, 1 or 2 plays and suddenly you're talking about having a lead or at least having a tie with LSU on Saturday. Obviously, that didn't end up happening, but you're not getting blown out. I mean, yeah, the Vanderbilt game got away from you and you didn't have Sellers for the second half of that one, but you're doing enough to still be in these games. You just have not been able to close the deal and get over that hump. And again, it's only going to get harder from here with the next, 4 opponents that you have coming up that are all ranked pretty high.
803-404-6100. Let's go to the phone lines. Ray wants to weigh in this afternoon. Ray, how you doing? What's on your mind?
I'm doing okay, and like I had 3 years, I won't miss a home game this year. We had the one against Oklahoma, but God, as much as I like Shane Beamer as the face of our program, the CEO, the recruiter, the rah-rah guy, and all that, he checks all those boxes. But man, I can't trust a guy to make an offensive coach hire, though. At this point, I really hope Donati brings somebody in like don't a lot of these schools have like these guys who are like managers of like the football program that kind of work with the head coach and things like that? I'm thinking we might need to do that because I don't want to get rid of Beamer. He's a good coach, good recruiter. But my God, I mean, I think some of these offensive coaching hires never should have happened. That's just my opinion. But trying to get on with it, the game, I mean, I think the first play just said everything you want to know. And I think the fourth down play where you need 4 or 5 yards, that play call was absolutely absurd. Joe Montana couldn't have made that throw because there was no window there. There was no window whatsoever. And only you're picking on a quarterback that might be the best one in the country. So we'll see that. But from Tyler's point of view, being, I guess you've been here like 3 or 4 years, Tyler.
Yep.
But if you look at this game objectively, talking about the Oklahoma game, and you say Mike Shula versus Brent Venables, who do you like in that matchup?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to lean towards BV on that one.
Yeah, exactly. I was a fan, and all of us old Gamecocks, we can all get our hopes up and everything. I'm going there expecting to win, but when I take the glasses off and I look at I look at Mike Shula as our OC, and I look at Venables, our head coach, is basically a DC. Right, we're behind the 8 ball right there, so we got to figure out a way to win this game, and I hope that Sean brings I hope he's allowed to. See, we don't know a whole lot about how that team is coached or whatever, but I hope he's allowed to do his thing. And right now, guys, I think we're at a reflection point with Coach Beamer. I think if there ever was a honeymoon period, I think it's definitely over. So I'm pulling for him because I'm a Gamecock fan, but I'm also becoming a realist. And I think all of our fans have become a realist too, and they've seen it, and they're like, okay, come on, all this stuff, this Barnum and Bailey stuff is not working, Coach. We got to see some results. But hey, thanks a lot, guys.
Appreciate the phone call. Yeah, I mean, look, I will say this. I don't think the program's in the dumps. No. They're 3-3. They very easily could be 5-1. Things needed to break your way a little bit.
Sure.
If Lenore Seller stays healthy in the Vanderbilt game, maybe we're talking something different. So it's not like they've shown up and just been completely outclassed. I don't look at any of these 3 games they've lost and be like, boy, there is a massive, massive talent deficiency. Are there things that need to be fixed? Yes, dramatically. The offensive line. Now we have a potential fix, some potential duct tape for the offensive line, maybe a fix. Does that solve things over the next 6 games?
And I think that's why the frustration is so high right now, because you don't feel like you're that far away from being successful. And again, like you said, you're in 2 of those games right there at the very end, despite how poorly you played in a lot of areas. So it's not this insurmountable mountain to climb. You're not that far away, which is, again, frustrating when you're dealing with stuff that you're dealing with. But, yeah, there is reason for optimism. It's just not very high as of right now. But, yeah, you're not in the doldrums like Kentucky is in the SEC. You're at least doing better than that. So there are reasons why this thing can get better. You just hope they figured it out.
We'll come back. A little bit of basketball news from today. Not shocking news, but a little bit of basketball news. We'll share that with you and wrap up hour number 2. It is the Halftime Show. Show just flying by 1:40 on your Monday here as we get you set for getting in tomorrow. We'll have the Shane Beamer press conference. Don't forget, you can always hear that right here from 1 to 2 o'clock, and we'll hear what Coach has to say tomorrow. Good news, and I know he won't necessarily address it, but at least coming out of this particular game, the good news is there was a lot. It looked like a lot of injuries.
Yep.
Doesn't look like anything is too severe. That's the kind of good news. Now, we'll wait to see what Brandon Cisse and Shed Surratt. Shed Surratt probably, unfortunately, is the one that's out for a period of time based on kind of what has been said and the way it looked.
There goes another injury in their offensive line, already without Marky Anderson, Nolan Hay, Kason Henry. So you add in another guy that has been starting for you pretty much this entire season, with that left guard spot to add to it.
Jacob weighs in and says, do you think the injuries on the offensive line are due to players playing slow and confused, not confident in what they're doing? When you're not aggressive and playing fast, that's when injuries tend to happen.
I don't think you're off base for asking the question. I'm not a medical expert to be able to look at those situations and know why the injuries are happening, but it is concerning, and this is the second time in 3 years that you've had so many injuries happen to that one specific position group, which isn't the excuse for why they're playing so poorly. There's other reasons for that, but definitely doesn't help.
803-404-6100. We'll get back into a lot of college football, big picture college football. Tyler even took in a little bit of a first half there over the weekend. And
I did.
We'll see if he came away impressed or not. But earlier today, South Carolina basketball, SEC Media Days taking place for SEC basketball. And Tyler, no surprise here at all, but the Gamecocks picked to finish 16th in the SEC.
There's your bulletin board material, Coach Paris. If that's, it was a rallying cry 2 years ago. If nobody expecting anything out of them, then here you go again. You got your fuel, and we'll see if they can prove everybody wrong once again. But, yeah, not the least bit shocked that they ended up at the bottom of the barrel here.
Yeah, it was either going to be they or LSU that was going to end up there at the bottom. And, again, as we all know, the schedule slated to start several weeks from tomorrow on November the 4th, when South Carolina will take on North Carolina A&T. By the way, coming up in a week. Is it a week? Today's the
13th.
Today's the 13th. Yep, coming up a week from Sunday, up at First Horizon Coliseum in Greensboro, South Carolina will have an open exhibition game against North Carolina State and first-year head coach Will Wade. So you will get a chance to see them, the exhibition game. You will get a chance to see them if you want to drive up to Greensboro on a Sunday afternoon, 4:30 game for that, and see them take on NC State in an exhibition game up there, a little charity event.
Also, when we're talking about basketball news, of course, earlier on this morning, we also learned the women's side of things that going to be without Chloe Kitts this year with ACL tear, which that is a massive blow to the women's basketball side of things.
Putting things in perspective, Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
Perspective. South Carolina's in a great place.
They're still in a good place. Took out a lot of talent on that team, but she was obviously, one of your best players, and you hate to see her be lost for the year. Obviously, not going to have Ashlyn Watkins this year. Now you're not going to be without Chloe Kitts, so they're going to be fine. They're good. They got plenty of talent on that team, but that is still significant.
Well, what I was going to say is putting things in perspective. It feels like things are going wrong for them. It feels like just I don't want to say the wheels are falling off because that makes it sound like the program's on the decline. But we have a certain standard for women's basketball, right?
Sure.
Like a very, very high, hey, we expect you to be in the Final Four.
Yep.
Hey, we expect you to be in the championship game. You just mentioned no Ashlyn Watkins. You just mentioned now no Chloe Kitts. The guards should be a pretty solid little group. But, yeah, it just feels kind of like knowing that women's basketball has taken steps forward with UCLA, with Southern Cal, with Tennessee, with several other programs. Connecticut is back. it just feels like South Carolina is going to be just on the outside of the top tier this year.
Yeah, could be a rough season. Again, hoping for the best, but yeah, two of your significant key players that we were expecting for this year obviously not going to be available. So that's tough. And again, they'll get rolling here in about a month's time as well, and we'll see what happens.
So that was the basketball side of things. We'll continue to monitor that. But yeah, the bad news for the women's team, and then for the men's team, kind of what it is. They got to prove themselves wrong, climb out of the basement. I'm sure Lamont Paris will use that as a motivation. Look, they haven't gotten South Carolina right the last 2 years. They had them picked dead last in the first year, and they finished, I think, 14th or 13th. That was an improvement.
Yep.
2 years ago, had them picked 11th. Finished better. 803-404-6100.
Right in set, Dingle and Hunt in the lineup. Matthew Fuller's the back. Sellers out of the gun. Brings a man across the space. That's Harbor. Handoff inside and wide open. It's Fuller, breaks another tackle at the 50. Foot race down the far sideline at the 20. 15, 10. Are you kidding me? Touchdown, Carolina. Touchdown, Matthew Fuller. A night game in Baton Rouge, and he just cranked out a 72-yard touchdown run.
That was the call on Saturday night. Matthew Fuller goes off left tackle, 72 yards, and the Gamecocks would take a 7-3 lead early in the ball game, and you kind of thought, maybe we got something going here, and then that would be with 25 seconds to go in the first quarter, Tyler Head.
Yep.
Matthew Fuller would get back in the game, would not receive a touch there until later in the third quarter.
Yeah, that's right. And again, that goes back to another talking point coming away from the weekend is like, okay, you've had this kind of mix of running backs through the first couple games, and we kind of thought, especially when we saw the Kentucky game where Matthew Fuller was trusted to tote the rock at the very end of that and ended up being the leading carrier and leading rusher in that game, at least from a running back standpoint, that he was kind of going to be the guy. And when you rip off a run like that, it's like, okay, let's ride the hot hand here. And Rasul Faison did have a decent game, but it was head-scratching to not see them go back to the Fuller well until well into the third quarter. And apparently after Beamer had to tell Mike Shula, hey, let's get 28 the ball some more.
And I do legitimately wonder, like, is that a Mike Shula thing where he gets on the headset and is like, hey, Marquell Blackwell, please put in Matthew Fuller, or is that a Blackwell thing where he's kind of like looking around going like, all right, you're in, you're out. I don't have an answer for that, but yes, you feel like that would be something that would be paid a little bit more attention to. And remember, we had this issue with Marcus Satterfield back in the day with Jaheim Bell, where Jaheim Bell couldn't seem to get quite on the field, and there was an argument about like, well, you got to get your best players on the football field.
Yeah. I don't know. Somebody is at fault for that kind of decision, whether it be Shula or Marquell Blackwell. But regardless, it's something that I hope we don't see again because, again, you saw the success. And he got 2 carries back-to-back. So his first 2 carries of the game were the play before that, then that play rips it off, and then again doesn't touch the ball for basically a quarter and a half at that point in time. And really, when he got the ball in the second half, it was only for a handful of touches, too. He got 1 catch out of the backfield, and then he got, I believe, 5 more rushes for the rest of the game. So definitely numbers you want to see improve if he is going to be your main guy in the backfield.
And I felt, and it wasn't huge runs, Tyler, but I felt South Carolina was having a little more success running the football on Saturday night than I'd seen. Faison has 13 carries for 68 yards. Matthew Fuller, now, again, do with it what you will, 7 carries for 83 yards, but 1 carry goes for 72 on its own. That means 6 others for just 11 yards. But it did feel like that they were getting some yardage to create second and a little bit shorter, third and shorter.
Yeah, they were in those situations, and then you seemingly kept running into, the pre-snap procedural penalties, which put you in a second and long, but eventually led to third and long, because when you get to the end of the game and you look at the numbers overall, and I keep track of this for every single week, South Carolina once again averaged a third down of a little over 10 yards, and they only converted 6 of 16, which is under 40%, which kind of tracks for the numbers they've had so far this year. So whether it be a pre-snap penalty or a sack or an intentional grounding, kept putting themselves in those third and long situations. And when the passing game wasn't as effective as it needed to be, obviously you ended up coming up short more often than not on those third downs.
So all that transpires. South Carolina falls 20-10 on Saturday night, and that leads to a massive change. And it's a change, fair or unfair. We don't like, look, I'm sure you were with me. Nobody likes calling for another person's job. Nobody wants, I don't care how much I dislike you. I don't want you to be fired. I don't want you to be. Now, Lonnie Teasley is paid handsomely to not be employed, but nobody wants to see anybody fired. But that leads us to the word that, and it's interesting how Shane Beamer described that this went down, that he got on the phone with Jeremiah Donati at 4:15 this morning, Sunday morning, and basically made the call and then fired Lonnie Teasley that morning, had him in his office. And I go back, and Tyler, you're watching the game. You could just see the frustration, the anger on Shane's face when these things were happening.
Yeah, and there were certain points as well where there wasn't even a reaction. It was almost kind of like a bewilderment of like, I can't believe I'm watching this happen again. And again, this is something that's been building and gotten to this point, for a while. And there was certainly a lot of belief that maybe they could have made a decision last offseason to move on from Lonnie Teasley. Decided not to do that with the hope that things were going to get better this year, and they obviously haven't. And you're right, there is the human element of this, where that is a guy that is now unemployed and a family and wife and kids and all that kind of stuff that are affected by this too, that we don't really think about quite as much when it comes to these guys losing their jobs. But again, when you're in a position like that and you're getting paid as much as they're getting paid, and your job is to perform in a public setting, and when it's not going the way that it needs to, you're going to be subject to the scrutiny, and obviously, can lose your job in the process, which is what happened with Lonnie Teasley. And now you've got Sean Elliott for the stretch run of the season to see if he can figure things out, and whether that means, he ends up being your guy going forward. You go out there and hire somebody after the season. We don't know, but you're in a new era with the offensive line and hoping for the best.
Now, what will also come of this is what happens with recruiting, maybe even the transfer portal. Look, Lonnie Teasley, I'm not trying to convince anybody he was this great offensive line coach, and the results speak for themselves. But we do know he was well-liked.
Yeah.
And South Carolina has a 5-star offensive lineman in Darius Gray currently committed to their staff. You look at what else they've been able to do. They're in very well on I think it's Maxwell Hyler out of Pennsylvania, who's a 5-star lineman in the 2027 class. Always amazed me. I don't know what Lonnie Teasley was doing to be able to get involved with these guys, or if this is a Shane Beamer situation. But you do now pay attention to your offensive line recruiting. Now, you brought it up, somebody brought it up. You bring in 3 stars and 2 stars and you build them up, it's kind of irrelevant. You bring in 5 stars, they're at least a little more developed, and maybe there's a little less development that's needed. But this is the one position I don't think – you definitely don't hold on to a coach just for the sake of holding on to elite talent in the recruiting portal.
Right, and this is the double-edged sword of this, because moving on from him does put you at risk for some of these high-profile guys that you do have currently committed to you, or possibly being committed to you coming up here soon. But at the same time, it's almost kind of like, well, this is for your own good, right? Because while, yes, you'd be coming in here as a 4 or 5-star guy, we don't think you'd be able to reach your max potential as a player, given the track record of what Lonnie Teasley has done here so far. So if you can hang on to these guys and bring in a new offensive line coach, whoever that may be, or you hang on to Sean Elliott to keep him in that same spot, you feel like making that move is going to put those guys in the best position to succeed if they do still decide to come here.
Darius Gray, again, the number 1 rated offensive interior tackle in the country, number 16 overall, the highest rated recruit in the class for South Carolina. We'll see what happens there with him. Shane Beamer, without naming names because it would be illegal, has basically already said he's been on the phone with Darius Gray and described the situation to him. Zion Giles, the number 5 player in the state, number 15 player overall at offensive line, who's a 4-star player, offensive tackle out of Carver's Bay. I would imagine they've been on the phone with him, trying to make sure he understands everything. Anthony Baxter, another 3-star recruit out of South Point High School, 6'3", 335. So that's your 3 offensive linemen. I know they'd like to add another 2 or more. And quite frankly, after Saturday night, and it'll probably have to be through the transfer portal, now you're looking at like, all right, who can we add through the center position?
Yeah, listen, no options are off the table as of right now. And again, it seems like these past 2 years, they've gone out and brought in so many guys via the portal, if nothing else out of fear of depth, because of the situation you got in 2 years ago with so many injuries. And unfortunately, right back in that same situation once again today, where I know 2 years ago they didn't even have enough guys to build up a second option on the offensive line of practice. And I imagine you're probably teetering close to that if you're not already there right now, given the amount of injuries that you currently have.
One other thing just from the weekend, Tyler, and look, we haven't gotten into, and this might be more, we might have to go more tomorrow because we got Jamie Bradford coming up, our big picture college football look around. There was so much to decipher from the South Carolina game.
Yeah.
You had 6 hours to do it.
Yeah.
I only had 3, but so much to decipher. But big picture Major League Baseball. All right, Mariners get things going bright and early last night.
Yep.
Off to a very good start there. They're up 1-0, and we'll get more Major League Baseball today coming up at 5 o'clock with the Mariners and the Blue Jays in Game 2 of that.
Yeah, again, our picks, or at least my picks right now, with the Dodgers and the Mariners still looking pretty good. God, thrilling late night on Friday with the final game of the divisional series between the Dodgers and the Mariners, and that whole series was just a lot of fun. Close games, back and forth games, and you got treated to a gym on Friday night, and I give a lot of credit to the Mariners for being able to play that late game, had the quick turnaround, having to travel to Toronto, and still picking up the first win of the series in the ALCS last night.
Logan Gilbert on the mound for the Mariners tonight. And again, that'll be a 5:03 first pitch on Fox. That'll be followed up tonight. Dodgers-Brewers, 8 o'clock tonight. Brewers knock off the Cubs there on Saturday night.
Yeah, again, and Jen was following along with that while we were doing our watch party here on Saturday, and that was a pretty spirited series as well. That obviously got to 5 games, and look, LA is not really missed a beat. It seems like since the postseason started. I'm interested in seeing this matchup tonight, and what ends up happening there is we see who ends up in the World Series here in a couple weeks.
So a little bit of baseball talk there. Yeah, Mariners and the Blue Jays, Dodgers and Brewers. I had the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. You had the Dodgers and the Mariners. So we'll see how things kind of. One of us will get one team in.
Yep, one of us will be right, at least on the AL side.
One person could potentially be spinning the wheel of punishment that we'll scoop up this week. 803-404-6100. We'll come back. A couple segments with Jamie Bradford. We'll see what he has to say. You're listening to the Halftime Show. It is a Monday, and it is 2:18, and that means we are joined by our good buddy Jamie Bradford. Follow him on Twitter at Sports Media JB, who is fresh off a weekend. By the way, serious question, how is Charleston down there? I know you've had this nor'easter come through. We've had some storms, some flooding. Give us a little update on the Crescent City and how things are holding up down there.
Oh, we're fine. I mean, it'd be nice to see the sun every so often, but they say it's going to be out by the end of the day at some point in time, maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, who knows. But, yeah, there was a lot of water. I mean, downtown, we're used to that, but there were some spots that certainly I didn't expect to see the Stono River and places like that reach, at least not with a storm like this. But it got us a little bit, but ready to see some sunlight, Bill, and get the nice, cool temperatures in here so we can enjoy the outdoors.
There you go. I'm with you. I'm with you on that. And they're coming. They're coming, buddy. You can break out the fire pit and maybe some long sleeves at night and thoroughly be able to enjoy that and get into some nice fall weather. Speaking of which, by the way, last Wednesday we kicked off, 49 consecutive days of college football. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
So Jamie, just in case you're prepared, this Tuesday, New Mexico State and Liberty, Arkansas State and South Alabama, Florida International and Western Kentucky to get out back with the fire pit and watch some football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Big New Mexico State fans around here, so we're pretty fired up for that one.
Oh, Liberty. You got the old former Charleston Southern coach, Jamie Chadwell there doing big things there for the Flames. Well, there's so much to get into. I mean, there's just you got the game itself, you got the mistakes in the game, but let's start with now the big picture, something that I think a lot of people wanted to see happen, but me personally, never saw Shane Beamer making a mid-season move with Lonnie Teasley. He does that. What was your assessment when you saw this news yesterday? What is your feelings moving forward?
Well, first of all, when I caught wind of what was going on, the first thing that came to my mind was honestly kind of what he said last night. This had to be weighing on him for a while, because if we've learned anything about Shane Beamer, he doesn't make a rash decision overnight. He's pretty calculated. He takes everything into evaluation, and then he evaluates it and reevaluates it. And he's got a really close group of people that he kind of leans on. And so, I know it was kind of the middle of the night when he, I guess, made the call to Jeremiah Donati. So, had he maybe bounced this off of somebody in his tight-knit, close circle in the past, what type of notes did he have on this thing? I don't know, but I don't think that he just got on the airplane and decided this is what we need to do. But the fact that that they have done that now, and that Coach Teasley, and by the way, I think we should all wish Coach Teasley and his family the best. He is a wonderful person, and his family, they're top-notch people, and I hope he lands on his feet, and I'm sure that he will. But obviously, he's not going to be here doing this anymore. So what comes next? Obviously, you fans are going to be looking at the short term, which is what do they look like on the field when they kick off against Oklahoma on Saturday? What is improved and what hasn't improved? I don't think that the decision to remove Coach Teasley as the offensive line coach had anything to do with pass protection or run blocking, to be honest with y'all. I think it had everything to do with the fact that every week they make the same mistakes over and over. I mean, the Kentucky game, they were pretty good in that department, but they just continue to make the same mistakes. Like, you can't have all these pre-snap penalties. You can't have a center who doesn't know the cadence or who has, snap infractions every single game. You just can't have that. I mean, this is the SEC. This is college football. Like, there's no room for stuff like that. They get you beat. So I think it's just the lack of progress when it comes to the silly stuff. I mean, overall the other night, look what they did on the ground. They ran it as well as they've done all year. The last two games, actually, they've run it pretty well on the ground. But they just make too many mistakes, and so we'll see if some of that stuff gets cleaned up in the short term.
And, Jamie, I think the biggest question to ask as we kind of now reflect on the Lonnie Teasley era as the offensive line coach is why did it get to this point? Because again, the biggest thing for him is obviously his recruiting prowess and the talent that he's brought in, and 4- and 5-star guys seemingly left and right. But when they get on the field, it just wasn't translating. It wasn't working. And again, we're not at practice. We don't get the same access that media used to have under Spurrier and stuff like that. So we don't get to see what happens Sunday through Friday, but something clearly wasn't working, and that's the bewildering part, because you had the talent seemingly, but it wasn't translating on the field. And the injuries didn't help, obviously, but even without that, you saw too many issues over his time as the offensive line coach to believe that it was going to get any better from here.
Yeah, I mean, the is pretty glaring. I mean, I guess the best example of that this year is Josiah Thompson, and then you look at a guy who has developed as a true freshman and Shed Surratt. Now, I know that he went down on the 72-yard touchdown run the other night, and we'll find out if he's okay moving forward. But the question with him wouldn't be in the short term. It'd be in the long term. So like next year when Shed Surratt is back in a uniform as a sophomore, where would he be? I think we all expected to see Josiah take another step this year, and I don't think there's an argument that you can say that he has done that. They've recruited a lot of guys who are on this team who just aren't. I mean, they were very talented, highly recruited guys, but I think overall you wouldn't look at that group and say, well, they've developed into what we thought they would be 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, and like you said, some of these guys have had injuries. I mean, Marquis has been banged up throughout his career. Obviously, Kaysen has had his injury issues, et cetera. Look in the NFL, look at Torricelli Simpkins. I mean, I can make an argument that Torricelli Simpkins was a guy last year who was probably maybe the most consistent dude that they had, but he transferred in for 1 year from North Carolina Central, I think it is what it was. And that offensive line was average offensive lineman in the league. So there's just a lot of ways to look at this and think that it just hasn't developed, and they've just continued to make too many mistakes. And, I think that has largely affected Lenore Sellers and some of the decision-making that he has made or hasn't made. I think it's affected a lot of things. I mean, it's not all the offensive line's fault, this lack of offense this year. It's not all their fault. It's everybody's fault. But, I mean, those guys – They just make a mistake in game 2, and then the same one in game 4, and then the same one in game 6, and it just doesn't seem to get much better.
So what do we expect now with Sean Elliott taking over? Do we expect less of these mental mistakes? Do we expect a more physical group? I mean, he's got 6 days, and count me in as thinking this is a winnable game against Oklahoma. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm a homer. I know I'm biased. I know I've got all kinds of issues. But I count this as a winnable game, Jamie. What can Sean Elliott do in 6 days to kind of get something kind of fixed?
Yeah, that's $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, look, we've been around Coach Elliott long enough, both watching him on the field and, I mean, he's such a pillar in the community in Columbia. Everybody knows what he's all about. I mean, it is intensity, it's accountability, and I think that's where they're going to start, holding these guys accountable to what they do. And if they don't do it, then you might see a different guy in there. Now, they're getting low on bodies. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, I think the biggest question mark really has to do with how much of his influence will we see in kind of the scheme and setup of the run game moving forward, and some of their blocking schemes and things like that. And does that mean that they need to maybe twist something here and there in the overall offense to fit that? I mean, maybe there's something that these guys, he feels like, can do a little bit better by doing it a different way. And if so, how does that influence how they call the game moving forward? I mean, I don't think any of us are going to know the answers to that unless you understand the game of football a little bit and you're able to evaluate it starting on Saturday. But I think first and foremost, it's going to be an accountability factor, and these guys are going to be held accountable to what they do and don't do. And the guys that do it better are going to play.
About 2 more minutes before we have to the break here. And again, the center spot's kind of been the focal point of issues on the offensive line. Do you know how many guys have experience playing center that are in the mix and capable of continuing to go through and see who can figure out to be the best option at that spot?
That are healthy?
Yeah, that are healthy.
One.
Probably. I mean,
2.
Yeah, definitely 2. Maybe 3. I mean, I thought Marquis was supposed to be a guy that they had kind of circled there, but obviously I mean, maybe they come back to him if he gets healthy. I'm not sure. You know, I don't know what's going
healthy. He can't stay healthy.
I mean, Bill. Like it's hard to, like it's easy to be negative. I'm with you on that. Like I'm not saying you're wrong for saying that. Like these guys just we've seen them go down over and over. Like it's hard to look at it and say, well, healthy. Like it's just too easy to say. I don't know if the guy's going to be healthy, so you might as well get somebody else ready to go. I mean, obviously Newsome and Boaz were the guys that clearly they, I guess, had circled to be in there. But both of those guys have had their issues this year. I'd say Newsome's had less. Boaz, I don't know if it's between the years or what's going on. I mean, I don't know how you're the starting center in the spring and then you get to the fall and every single game, I mean, there's a snap infraction. Like that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
803-404-6100. We'll come back, get one more segment in with Jamie Bradford. We'll talk about the actual game, what he saw, and we'll look ahead to Oklahoma. You're listening to Bill Gunner, Tyler Head. He is Jamie Bradford. It is a Monday afternoon on the Halftime Show. Well, 235 on a Monday. Tyler Head, producer Ed Berg. He is Jamie Bradford. I'm Bill Gunner. As we kind of wrap things up here and talking with Jamie Bradford about the game that was this weekend. And all right, Jamie, we've talked about the offensive line, but your big picture takeaway on the actual football game that you saw this past weekend.
Well, let's start with the good. You know, I mean, this has been a rough few weeks for South Carolina. So let's start with the good. The last two games, they've run for 427 yards on the ground. Now, I know that that's a lot of carries when you go back and add it up. I think, 45 this weekend and 48 against Kentucky. But if you take the scrambles out of it from Lenore Sellers in both games, I mean, like this past weekend, it probably would have been pretty close run to pass when it came to the play calls. Now, I know that's not necessarily what balance is, but I'm just saying it's not like they only ran it, or like they ran it 45 times and threw it 27 times. They were trying to throw it more, but Sellers obviously had to scramble out of there. And, you know, once again, I thought that the running backs did some good things. I think I mentioned that last week here. You know, obviously Matt Fuller's 72-yarder is the highlight, but, I mean, Rasul Faison has, you know, he popped a bunch of nice ones the other night. And Fuller obviously looked pretty good. So I think that they're getting it going there. You know, the flip side of it is they can't throw the football. I mean, they just don't throw the football very well downfield. And so I think that offensively there probably should be a little bit more quick game. Probably should have seen some of that the other night. Maybe another screen or two to keep these guys honest. I mean, not everybody's as good as LSU's defense, but obviously they're pinning their ears back when they had a chance on Saturday night. So, I mean, Oklahoma, Alabama, I mean, all these teams are really good, man. I mean, they're going to do something similar to that and force the Gamecocks to make a mistake. So they're going to have to figure that out. Defensively, they did what they do. I mean, they gave you a chance to compete and win the game. I mean, they turned them over 3 times. You know, I mean, they made a couple of plays down there on the goal line. Had they not done that, they would have been blown out of the game. I mean, I like where they are defensively. So, I mean, the offense at some point in time is going to have to take control of the football game and not have to lean on the defense to constantly come up with plays to be able to either help you stay in it or help you win it.
Let's go back to Fuller here for a second. And Faison did have a solid night himself, but of course Fuller had the highlight play with the long run, and he's obviously gotten the majority of the carries these past couple weeks. When you talk about the running backs specifically there, what is it about his game, and what really stands out to you about Fuller, and why is he maybe clicking a little bit better than the other guys in this running back room right now?
Yeah, well, it's twofold now. Going into the game, you felt like if you needed a guy to get you some tough yards, he was probably the guy to do it. But if you saw the last 15 yards of that 72-yard touchdown run the other night, you figured out quickly he can get away from him in a hurry. I mean, LSU was about to track him down, and he said, I'm not having any of that. He just ran away from him there at the end. So now I think he's the most explosive guy they've got, boys. I mean, you know, you watch him run. He runs with a mission. He's able to put his foot in the ground. He runs with good shoulders. His weight is good. I mean, he's a guy that has a lot of want to in him, and it seems like he's got some pretty good eyes as well. And then you see him in the open field, and you go back and I mean, not to question Coach Blackwell or Coach Shula or anything like that. I don't know what the play calls were and what they were doing, but I mean, we didn't see him. I don't recall him getting another carry in the first half after that 72-yard touchdown run. And he only finished with 7 on the night. Now, that, like you said, Faison had a really good night. So, you know, it's not like you're trying to punish one guy for the other guy, but, man, 7 carries, you know what I mean? I mean, you'd like to see if there's a way that you could have a few more for Matt Fuller. I mean, he seems to have some explosiveness in there, and if they can continue to get that out of him, maybe that helps them in the pass game. Who knows?
On the flip side of things, defensively, I think they're continuing to improve, and I really like the play of Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy. I like the way the interior of the line is coming along. This is a stretch now. Obviously, when you look at who they get, Alabama, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Mississippi, that they're really going to be tested. But Jamie, kudos to Clayton White. I know. Look, we're all down on the offense. We're all down on Lenore Sellers in the offensive line. That defense is quietly just going about getting better every week.
Yeah, I'm a huge Clayton White fan. I mean, this guy he has a system, and he's recruiting to it, and he just has a tough bunch of dudes, and they find a way to hunker down when you need them to hunker down. Look, yeah, man, they gave up some big plays the other day, okay? I think the one that stands out more than all of them, unfortunately, was a scramble by Nussmeier. I mean, that was a big, big play in that game. But besides that, they played really, really well. I mean, the biggest issue for the Gamecocks defensively in Baton Rouge was there was a huge matchup problem. And I don't know that they had anybody to cover Trey Desgreen, and I'm not so sure there's many people out there in the league that are going to be able to cover this guy. The only way you can cover him is by getting to the quarterback. And if y'all noticed, they were getting the ball out of Nussmeier's hands in a hurry. I mean, it was very well timed. We're not going to let these guys get back here and affect him. Obviously, they beat him up a few times, his knee, his ankle. We knew about his oblique coming in, so I'm sure he had to get a little bit of an ice bath afterwards. But they get the ball out of his hands pretty quickly, and that kid's 6'7". He's a matchup problem. I mean, he was their main source of offense throughout the evening, or their most consistent, I should say. But, yeah, I'm with you, man. I really like these guys. They don't quit. They keep coming at you, and they're pretty good up front, and they find a way to force turnovers. Now, Brandon Cisse, if he's out this weekend, that's a problem in my eyes. I mean, he is really, really good out there on the corner at the corner position. But overall, this group, it was going to be hard to replicate what they did last year. But nobody can look me in the face and say that they're not pretty good. I think these guys are pretty good.
Well, and that's the reason for optimism going forward. And look, it's a tough 6-game final stretch, particularly these next 4 games against highly ranked teams. But you feel like if the defense can continue to play the way that they are and continue to improve, they're at least going to give you a shot in every single one of these games, which that's all you can ask for. And hopefully the offense can find their footing to be able to pull off at least a couple victories down the stretch here.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, man, it is such a double-edged sword when you talk about South Carolina. I mean, every team that is left on the schedule knows that Carolina can beat you. Everybody knows that. Like, they have talent on both sides of the ball. It's there. It exists. And we've seen this team just explode out of nowhere almost under Shane Beamer multiple times in the last few years. So everybody knows what they're capable of doing. But then the other side of it is if you ask most people, especially like the fan base and those who are closer to the program who cover it, they can live with being 3-3, not live with it in the sense of like that's a good record, but it's understandable when you play in this league. Hey man, things are going to happen. But what people can't live with is how they have gotten to 3-3. That's what they can't handle, like the consistently inconsistency. Or the consistent inconsistency, if that makes sense. So, if Carolina is able to get some of those things cleaned up, they can go out there and win games. And I do think that they're going to go out there and win games. I mean, but it's a very, very frustrating time right now. But, hey, look, Shane Beamer pointed out, I think it was yesterday, they were 3-3 a year ago, and nobody saw them sitting at 9-3 when the year ended. Now, this team has a lot more problems than that team had at 3-3 a year ago. How quickly can those suckers get resolved? They're going to be home for the next 2 weeks. Let's see what happens.
Jamie, always appreciate it. Certainly, there's a lot to discuss. I know y'all got a lot for your shows to get into. We'll kind of continue to monitor the offensive line situation, see what Sean Elliott can do to improve this offensive line going to Oklahoma, a game that I think is very winnable. Very, very winnable. I don't know how beat up John Mateer is this coming weekend, but, boy, he take it on the chin this past week against Texas.
Yeah, he did, man. I mean, and this will be a tough environment. It's a 12:45 kick. Gamecock fans get to do this 7 times a year, and this is the first time ever that Oklahoma has been in Williams-Brice Stadium. It's time to show them what it's like. Show them what it's like to come down here and play, and help these guys get going, and maybe they will get going. And by the way, before I get going, I just want to let everybody know all time, Lamont Paris is 1-0 in making the postseason when picked last in the league. So I'm going to get out in front of this. Gamecocks in March, they'll be dancing.
We'll hold you to that. Jamie, we'll talk to you next week.
See you guys.
Take care. We'll be right back. Wrap up the show. Thank you again to Mason Zandy for joining us earlier in the program to give us a little bit of an insight into coaching or being playing for Sean Elliott, and how we can maybe expect some changes. It's one thing to bring in a new offensive line coach during the offseason where they get 15 practices in spring and fall camp.
Sure. Yeah, no, this is something where the improvements may be small, but you can see something moving in the right direction. That's reason for optimism. And again, look, they did the good job with, run blocking the other night, and you obviously saw the results with how well your backs were able to do. So there is reason for optimism. Obviously, the injuries aren't helping there, but yeah, if Sean Elliott can get them 5% better, we'll take that. And obviously, this week's obviously a very short turnaround to see how much things can improve against Oklahoma, but you hope to see steady type of improvements over the course of these last 6 games of the season. And you do have another bye week in there as well to focus on some more fundamental things when you get to that point. But yeah, again, we understand why the decision was made to move on from Lonnie Teasley, and now it's in Sean Elliott's hands, and we'll see what he can do.
So we have somehow gone roughly 2 hours and 50 minutes without mentioning it. There was a coaching firing.
Yes.
Brian Callahan's out.
Yeah, if you've been keeping up with the Tennessee Titans, it's not gone well. Some of his comments post-game about his players and his team didn't give you a lot of reason for hope that things were going to improve. I thought the Tennessee Titans, when they moved on from Mike Vrabel, was a bad move. He's obviously got the Patriots on the up and up and on the rise with Drake May, a promising young quarterback in the NFL, and the Titans are back to the drawing board in terms of figuring out who their next head coach is going to be now.
All right, so that's the NFL one. Over the weekend, I was shocked. I didn't expect James Franklin. Now, I feel like Penn State got themselves in a position. They knew it was time for a change, so maybe I can understand. You didn't want to really wait things out, but you knew that this wasn't going to work anymore. But you're talking about a guy who just 2 weeks ago, Tyler, led his team onto the field as the number 3 team in the country. You're talking about a team who 10 months ago was in the college football playoff.
Yeah, semifinals. They were one drive away from playing for a national championship. Look, and we can dive into the more this tomorrow, talk about the candidates on the hot board and stuff like that. Penn State's going to regret this. I'm throwing this out there right now at 2:52 on October 13th. Within the next 2 to 3 years, Penn State is going to understand how bad they really screwed up in firing James Franklin. I get it. He wasn't winning the big games. That guy was averaging about 10 wins a season and taking you to heights Penn State hadn't seen in a very, very long time. There may have been some other things going on behind the scenes that led to this, because this is a really weird transition of just 2 weeks to go from being in the top 10 and looking like a team that could at least make the playoff again to firing your head coach after 2 bad games in a row. I don't get the move. I think it was a bad move, and I think Penn State's going to regret it.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
What will they regret?
The fact that they moved on from a coach that was consistent, because there's no guarantee you're going to hire Matt Rule. Think he's going to come in there and do a better job? I don't think so. I think this is something. I think this was a knee-jerk reaction to a season that was going wrong. I'll admit that. This year was going to be a lost one, all things considered. But you just don't move on from a guy that's that consistent. I get it. He wasn't winning the big games, and that was an issue. But this is too much of a knee-jerk reaction to me. And again, we can get into the the why and how of this tomorrow. But I think Penn State as a whole is going to regret this here very soon.
Now, it depends on who they get, right?
That is very true.
And
if you go get Nick Saban, then I'll say, all right, I'll back off on that a little bit, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, and that is the one thing that I do question and wonder is, like, who do you go get? Like, Matt Rule seems to be the guy. Listen, he kind of fits. What about Brian Kelly? A Midwestern guy that goes up there that's just kind of awkward and ornery. And there's some coaches that it's time for changes.
Mm-hmm.
Napier, obviously, but I don't think he's going to get that option. Brian Kelly, time for a change for him. James Franklin, it was a time for change for him. The one thing I am interested in is, like, where does James Franklin really fit? Because James Franklin's a bit of an odd duck.
I think he should probably do TV for a couple of years and wait out the cycle for a job that he really wants to come available. That's my personal opinion. We'll get into more of it tomorrow.
All right. Yeah, tomorrow will be another loaded show. We'll do a little more college football. Big picture, we'll have Shane Beamer coming up at 1 o'clock. We'll turn the page to Oklahoma. We got a lot of radio to get to this week, and if you are interested, you're going to want to stay tuned in. It's Tyler Head, it's Bill Gunner, it's producer Ed Burr.